In a vibrant Nigerian village nestled near the banks of a serene river that mirrored the sky, lived a young couple named Chinedu and Amaka. Their marriage, only 2 years old, was a beacon of warmth to the villagers. Their modest home hummed with life, colorful woven mats on the floor. Chinedu was known throughout the village for his strength and dedication as a farmer. His hands were cracked by the sun and earth, and his broad back bore the weight of a future he labored to secure. Amaka, a gifted seamstress, was beloved not just for her skill, but for the spirit she wove into every garment. Her sewing room brimmed with bright threads and the soft hum of her voice, a song that seemed to stitch the village together. But as time passed, something began to shift beneath the surface of their cheerful home. It started with the small things. At first, almost imperceptible. Chinedu came home later each day, his body weary from the fields, his mind elsewhere. Amaka would glance up from her sewing and ask, "How was the day?" But her voice felt swallowed by the quiet that followed. More often than not, Chinedu would give a tired grunt, his eyes distant. Amaka would sigh and return to her work, her needles slipping through clothes with a frustration she couldn't quite name. One evening, after another long day, Chinedu arrived home late as usual. Amaka stood beside him, her arms crossed. "Chinedu," she began, trying to keep her voice light. "It feels like you come home later and later. I had to fetch water and cook alone again." Chinedu wiped the sweat from his brow and shrugged. "Amaka, I work hard so we can eat. The crops demand more time now." "I understand, but..." She paused, searching his face. "It's not just about the work. We don't even talk anymore, not like we used to." He glanced at her, his expression tired, almost dismissive. "There's nothing to worry about. I love you, Amaka. What more needs to be said?" But Amaka felt her heart tighten. It wasn't the words she needed, it was something deeper, something unspoken. She turned back to the house, the silence between them heavy as the evening air. As the days turned to weeks, the tension between them deepened. Chinedu, consumed by the field, seemed to drift further from her. Amaka, in turn, began withdrawing into herself, filling the silence with her sewing and the company of her thoughts. She began to wonder if their love had changed, if the bond that once felt so strong was now fraying at the edges. One evening, after another quiet meal, she found herself standing by the door, watching the last light fade from the sky. "Chinedu," she said softly, "do you remember how we used to sit by the river? How we would dream about the future, about what our life would be like?" Chinedu, busy cleaning his farming tools, didn't look up. "I remember," he said, though his voice carried no warmth. Amaka's chest tightened, her words catching in her throat. "I miss those days," she whispered, but whether he heard her or not, she couldn't tell. It was a particularly grueling week when the house fell into an unusual quiet. Chinedu, tired from the field, stepped inside expecting the familiar warmth of freshly cooked stew. But the air was empty. Amaka's cheerful humming was absent. Frowning, he wandered through the house. Her sewing room was empty, a half-finished garment draped over the machine. His heart began to pound in his chest. Where was she? He left the house, his feet carrying him towards the river, drawn by instinct. And there, sitting on the grassy bank, was Amaka. She was staring at the water, her expression distant, as if she were looking at something beyond the river. Chinedu approached slowly, his heart heavy with something that he couldn't quite name. "Amaka," he said softly, sitting beside her, "are you all right?" For a long moment, she didn't answer. The river flowed gently before them, its surface reflecting the dimming light of the day. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet. "Do you remember the river, Chinedu? How it used to be our place? We would sit here for hours, dreaming about everything we wanted." He nodded, guilt creeping into his chest. "I remember." Amaka turned to him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I still dream, Chinedu. But now, I dream alone." Chinedu stared at the water, shame and confusion twisting inside him. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. For the first time in a long while, he realized he didn't know what to do or say. The distance between them weighed heavily on Chinedu's heart. That night, unable to sleep, he turned to Amaka in the darkness. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "let's go see Pa Olushola and Mama Rachel. I need to understand. I don't want to lose us." Amaka, lying beside him, was silent for a moment. Then she nodded, the sound of her breath soft in the night. The next evening, they found themselves sitting beneath the great mango tree, where the village elders often gave counsel. Pa Olushola and Mama Rachel had been married for over 30 years, and their wisdom was renowned. After listening to Chinedu and Amaka's story, Pa Olushola nodded thoughtfully. "You have spoken much about your troubles," he said, "but what I hear most clearly are the things left unsaid." Mama Rachel leaned forward, her voice gentle. "Let me tell you a story, my children. There once lived a couple, Ade and Tanwa. In the early days of their marriage, they were like the morning sun, bright and full of warmth. But as time passed, Ade became consumed by his work. He toiled endlessly, thinking that providing for Tanwa was all she needed. Tanwa, full of life and laughter at first, began to feel invisible. Her words fell on ears too tired to listen. She would speak, but it was as if her voice vanished into the air between them. And so, over time, she stopped speaking, not because she had nothing to say, but because she felt it no longer mattered. Years went by in this silence. Ade mistook her quietness for contentment, believing that as long as the house was full of food and the fields were full of crops, everything was well. One day, he returned home to find Tanwa gone. She had left, taking nothing with her but the weight of their unspoken words. Only then did Ade understand the silence that had grown between them, a silence that had hollowed out their love. When Mama Rachel finished her story, Chinedu sat still, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. The silence that followed was heavy, and for the first time, Chinedu understood its weight. "I thought I was showing love by working hard," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I thought that would be enough." Mama Rachel reached out, placing her hand gently over his. "Love is not just in what you do, Chinedu. It is in the time you spend, in the listening, in the seeing." Amaka's voice trembled as she spoke. "I should have spoken up more. I should have told you how lonely I was. And I should have listened," Chinedu replied, his eyes brimming with tears. "I don't want to lose you to the silence, Amaka." In the weeks that followed, Chinedu and Amaka worked to rebuild what they had nearly lost. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. Chinedu began coming home earlier, surprising Amaka by helping with dinner. Amaka, feeling seen again, began to share her thoughts and dreams, filling their home with warmth once more. One evening, they returned to the riverbank. As they sat together watching the river flow, Chinedu turned to Amaka and said, "This river is like our love, Amaka. Sometimes it gets muddy, but if we care for it, it will always flow clear again." Amaka smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in months. "And we will care for it together, Chinedu. Always." Together, they knew their love wasn't just a story of the past, but one they would continue to write, day by day, moment by moment. Thank you for watching this story. Do you think the provision of daily household needs for the family is more important than love and attention in a relationship or marriage? Share your thoughts in the comments. Also, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share with everyone. See you in my next story. Bye!